The human computers. The human computers were mainly women who performed mathematical calculations before electronic calculators were available. The term human computers dates back to the year 1613. At that time, it simply meant somebody who computes or calculates. Organizations like NASA, the Ford Motor Company, and the University of London all had teams of human computers doing their calculations. Mathematical tables and simple calculators were the common tool of this profession. During World War I, a large number of human computers were used on both sides to calculate map grids, navigation tables, and artillery tables. The need for human computers ceased to exist with the widespread availability of electronic computers and laptops. Today, human computers are reduced to entertainment purposes in TV shows with no scientific relevance anymore. The log driver. The log driver was the only job in forestry more dangerous than cutting down the trees. The log drivers guided logs down rivers to sawmills and pulp mills. The current of the river did the actual transport, while it was the log driver's job to ensure that the logs did not get stuck at river bends or pile up around rocks or at the riverbank. Log drivers did everything to avoid a log jam, because breaking up a jam was extremely dangerous. Once a log jam started, it grew and grew and grew with every new log coming downstream, adding difficulty and danger to the situation. Normal log movement was carried out by standing on the floating logs and moving them with peavies and hocked picks. However, large log jams were broken up with the help of dynamite, which created an additional danger. Many log drivers lost their lives by falling in the water and being crushed by logs or by being held underwater by logs and drowned. Log driving made boat travel on these rivers impossible, which was one of many reasons it ended in most regions in the 1970s. Other reasons for the end of log driving on rivers was the development of railroads and the use of trucks on logging roads. Nowadays, log driving on rivers is performed as a holiday celebration or as a tourist attraction only, for example, in the Catalan Pyrenees in Spain. The Resurrectionist. The Resurrectionists, or body snatchers, were grave robbers who illegally exhumed corpses of the recently dead to sell to medical schools for dissection. There were numerous attempts around the world to supply anatomists and medical schools with legally obtained fresh corpses. However, the demand was almost always higher than the legal supply. In 1752, the so-called Murder Act was passed in Great Britain. This act allowed judges to add public display of executed criminals with dissection to the death penalty punishment. This act filled some of the demand for fresh corpses, but it was insufficient for the ever-new hospitals and training centers that opened in that era. Making the situations worse, the medical schools paid top dollar for fresh dead bodies, which lead to riots at execution sites, where resurrectionists tried to take dead bodies by force. Things got even worse when, in 1828, the Burke and Hare murders became public knowledge. Burke and Hare committed 16 murders and sold the corpses to Robert Knox for dissection at his anatomy lectures. In 1831, another gang of body snatcher, the London Burkers, committed several murders in order to sell the corpses later. The demand for fresh dead bodies ceased to exist with the Anatomy Act of 1832. This act made it legal to obtain corpses from recently deceased elders from workhouses or elderly care facilities, thereby ending the era of body snatching. The soda jerk. The soda jerk was a job mostly carried out by young men who prepared drinks using a soda fountain in restaurants, cafes, and drugstores. The main ingredients of the drinks were flavored syrup, water, and ice cream. The soda drinks were then served with a spoon and a drinking straw similar to a milkshake. It was expected of a soda jerk to be partly salesman, partly entertainer, while preparing and serving the drinks. A good soda jerk could have a big impact on the popularity and the overall success of the place they worked at. Soda jerks developed their own jargon for the customers' drinks. For example, a strawberry milkshake was called "In the Hay," a Coca-Cola with ice was called "Scratch One," and a strong coffee was called "Draw One from the South." These terms sound a little foreign and far-fetched to today's ears. However, if we listen to today's coffee orders and how they have evolved in complexity over the last years, that puts things in perspective. Perhaps a coffee order: double reduced lactose milk, 3/4 of a teaspoon of organic sugar. Make sure the coffee is an organic Sumatran varietal, full city roast. Grind halfway between drip and espresso. Might sound a little foreign in a couple of decades too, hopefully. Soda jerks were fairly common in the United States from the 1920s to the 1950s. Today, the profession soda jerk does not exist anymore. However, baristas have taken over the role as afternoon bartenders that once were occupied by soda jerks. The Town Crier. The Town Criers were civil service officers responsible for public announcements, like why somebody was being hanged, as well as proclaiming royal news. After dark, they also functioned as watchmen at a time when fires were perceived as a bigger danger to city life than common theft or robbery. The Town Criers were active from the Middle Ages 11th century onwards until the early 20th century. At the end, they were replaced by mass media. In the modern era, some towns and cities have reinstated the post of Town Criers, especially in Great Britain. There are worldwide competition held for town crying today, one of which led to the world record of Alan Myatt being the loudest town crier, his voice registering with almost 115 decibels. This is as loud as a chainsaw, a snowmobile, or a sandblasting operation at close range.